Guten Erev Shabbos and Mazel Tov to the Glina and Ben Hamu families who are brightening up our summer and this coming Shabbos with an Aufruf, a celebration of an Aliyah before the Chasana, before the wedding of Yael and Nathan, which is a unique and special and beautiful thing for sure, and especially so this Shabbat. Soon we'll explain why. First, let's talk about an Aufruf, then we'll talk about this particular Shabbos, then we'll see why this week is so special for an Aufruf. The custom of an Aufruf, which is Yiddish for calling up, in other words, calling up to the Torah, really puts the basis of the upcoming wedding on the most solid of solid ground, which is Torah and Jewish life. When a wedding celebration begins not with a shmorg and single malts, but rather with a public Torah reading and calling the Chatan, the groom, up to say the brachas on the public Torah reading, and then, of course, after that, a shmorg and single malts. All this says that the basis of the couple's life will be rooted in Yiddishkeit and will be a continuation of the life of their parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, and hopefully paves the way for children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren to continue in the golden chain of our tradition. In Germany, they used to extend the Aufruf Shabbos all the way back to Friday night. In many places in the Sephardic world, there's a Shabbat Chatan, the groom's Shabbat, which is the week after the wedding itself, the Shabbos of Sheva Brachas. So the celebration, and even more importantly, the connection of a wedding to Torah and to Hashem, is at the center of the celebration from before it happens, well after the occurrence. Now, it's customary, as you know, to throw candies or sweets or nuts or some treat as a tangible symbol of the good wishes for prosperity and sweetness for all the life of the bride and groom together, singing, dancing, celebrating. In some communities, we have a record of, in France of all places, the Machzor Vitri, which is one of the oldest versions of the Siddur that we have in existence, mentions that the Aufruf was once sort of a holiday for the entire community, which shows how getting married and becoming a new family is of such precious importance to us. Fascinating enough, they would make an additional Torah reading for an Aufruf. On top of the weekly Torah portion, they would take out a second Torah scroll and read about the marriage of Yitzchak and Rivka, Isaac and Rebekah. And the Chazan would add special prayers into the liturgy for that Shabbat. The entire Shabbos was transformed into a celebration at every level. Now this Shabbos, Parshas Pinchas, is a special one in many ways. One is that we've just entered into a 3-week period called Bein HaMetzarim, between the walls. People just call it the 3 weeks. In our history, this is the period between the 17th of Tammuz, which was Thursday, and Tisha B'Av, 3 weeks from Thursday. Both are fast days, which recall the breaching of the walls of Jerusalem by the enemies of our people, and the subsequent destruction and burning of the temple and the exile that followed. The period in between these days takes on a mournful character, in which we customarily don't make shuls or we don't make weddings or shul dinners or concerts or other big events, particularly with music, as it's sort of a period of national mourning for tragedies that happened to us in the past. However, there is no public mourning on Shabbat, so not only do we not show any sadness on Shabbos, these 3 Shabbatot in particular, we take extra care to smile, to sing, to radiate joy, because the delight of Shabbos is magnitudes of order greater and higher than any sad thing that ever happened or ever will happen to us. In fact, if the fast days, even if Tisha B'Av itself occurred on Shabbat, as it did last year, we do not observe anything of the fast day on Shabbos. Rather, we rejoice in Shabbat and celebrate it as we always do, with good food, wine, a happy mood, and we make up the fast afterwards. Now, since we don't make weddings during this time, we usually don't have the privilege, the delight of celebrating an Aufruf connected to these weeks and the themes of the Torah portions. However, since by divine providence Yael and Nathan are traveling in the coming weeks to France for their wedding, and this week was our opportunity to call up Nathan for an Aliyah, for his Aufruf, a few weeks still in advance of the chuppah itself, they've given us the chance to shine a light on this week that we rarely see. Now, the Torah portion we'll read this Shabbat is absolutely unique and special and focused on Jewish marriage. It's named for Pinchas, who was and is and remains the definition of a zealot. He absolutely could not stomach the idea that Jewish boys and girls were not marrying each other, so he took matters into his own hands and acted zealously. That story is in the end of last week's portion, and this week's portion we learn that Pinchas is rewarded for it, as God celebrated, recognized his freelance initiative by giving him a covenant of peace and special status. But even that is not the most important feature of this week's portion for a bride and groom, or even for the rest of us. This week's portion contains the verse in the Torah that is the most frequently read verse in the course of an entire year's cycle of Torah reading. We take out the Torah and we read on Shabbat, on holidays, as you well know, also on fast days, morning and afternoon, and to ensure that 3 days do not pass without the Jewish people hearing some Torah, we read a brief excerpt from the weekly Parsha on Shabbat afternoon and on Monday and Thursday morning. So some passages get read more frequently than others. On Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of a new month on the Hebrew calendar, we read from this week's Sedra, we read from Parshas Pinchas, and in order to read the required minimum of 3 verses for each person who gets an aliyah, it winds up that we repeat one of the verses. It's chapter 28, verse 3 of the book of Bamidbar, of Numbers, and it says, V'amarta lahem zeh ha'ishe asher takrivu l'Hashem, kvasim b'nei shanat mimim, shnayim leyom ola samid. You shall say to them, this is the fire offering that you offer to God. You are to offer to God yearling male lambs unblemished 2 a day as a continual elevation offering. That becomes the most frequently read verse in the Torah. The following verse, perhaps this is a signal for us to pay attention to what's to follow. The following verse, we can make a strong argument, is the most important verse in the Torah. It's not Shema Yisrael. It's not love your fellow as yourself, as important and essential to us as those are. It's arguably the central instruction for what it is to be a Jew, and I think you'll agree, those of you who have expertise in the field, the central and paramount instruction of what it is to be married. Maybe it even speaks to us of what it means to be a human being. The verse we're talking about is chapter 28, verse 4, and it says, you should make one offering in the morning and make another offering in the afternoon. Es hakeves ha'achad taseh b'boiker, v'es hakeves ha'sheni taseh ben ha'arbayim. You should make one offering in the morning, make another offering in the afternoon. This is the Korban Tamid, the continuous daily offering or sacrifice in the Mishkan, the portable sanctuary that we carried with us in the desert and was eventually offered in the temple, both temples in Jerusalem, until the year 70 of the Common Era. And we're just waiting for the 3rd temple to be rebuilt so we can get back to doing what we're supposed to be doing. In the meantime, we study it. It's in our prayer service. You can find it in the Siddur, in our Siddur on page 32 and 33, right in the middle of the big paragraph where it says, 1 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon. Korbanot are offerings or sacrifices that the Torah prescribes for various occasions. If a person is feeling grateful or appreciative for regaining their health or returning safely from a journey, different things, they bring a korban todah, a thanksgiving offering. If a person or a community, or a rabbi for that matter, has committed a transgression or some other failing, even by mistake, a guilt offering may be in order. On Shabbos and Yom Tov, there's an extra offering called Korban Musaf. That's where we get Musaf from. But every day, there's this offering in the morning and the afternoon. It's called the Korban Tamid, and it expresses the giving nature of our desire to be connected to God, our source of life. It's not because of sin, not because it's a holiday, it's because of who we are and what we want to be. We're in a relationship with God, and the nature of a relationship has to be giving. We give of ourselves as Jews just like we give of ourselves as spouses and as people, not just in a crisis, not only on weekends and holidays when we have time, but every day, and really, if we're honest, more than once a day. There are opinions that say that since this offering is mentioned twice, once back in the book of Exodus and once here in the middle of the book of Numbers, and the first mention is in close connection with Sinai, this Korban Tamid, this daily offering, is also expressing the idea of covenant, the idea of bond or unity or connection. Any way you look at it, this daily expression of giving, in this case to God, really expresses the epitome of a relationship, most specifically a relationship between husband and wife. You'll recall that just 2 weeks ago we spoke about how the Jewish people and God are so often referenced as a bride and groom, a husband and wife, a married couple in so many different contexts. It's on the web, you can check it out. For a successful relationship, whether you've been married for 3 weeks or 3 months or 60 years, or if you're not yet married but you're about to be, Yael and Nathan, here's the Torah's advice for a solid relationship and strength and resilience through all that life puts in our path. Es hakeves ha'achad ta'aseh b'boiker v'es hakeves ha'sheni ta'aseh ben ha'arbayim. Make a little offering in the morning and make a little offering in the afternoon. Give something of yourself first thing in the day, and again in the afternoon, give yet again. If a person is looking to gain in a relationship, looking to get, what will I get out of the relationship? How will that person ever be satisfied? How can there ever be enough? If you're looking to give in a relationship, to contribute, to help and support, to offer of yourself, you'll never be disappointed, not one day, because there's always something you can contribute. There's always something of yourself which you have to offer. And of course, we all know that from experience that in giving, often the giver benefits as much or more than the recipient. Ultimately, it's not what you get that sustains a relationship, any relationship, it's what you give. We can be talking about the relationship between two partners. We can be talking about the relationship between the Jewish people and God. In all those, although we get a lot, we receive a tremendous amount. More often than oftentimes it's more than we realize or that we acknowledge. The real satisfaction, the real joy is in the giving. So we do it every day, and even more than once. A little offering in the morning, a little offering in the afternoon. This is a take-home message for all of us in this portion. And this time of year, to rejoice whenever we get the chance, and to be happy to give whenever we get the opportunity, and even to make it happen. We wish our bride and groom safe travels to their chuppah in the coming weeks, and a bayit ne'eman b'Yisrael, a faithful home amongst the Jewish people. May their home be a binyan adei ad, an everlasting edifice, an eternal home that is still talked about generations later, like we still talk about Avraham and Sarah's home as welcoming and peaceful. We are grateful to them for sharing this simcha with us, to their parents, and the extended family and the entire KST family, who all wish you well and share in your simcha. So to everyone, a good Shabbos and Mazel Tov.